Red Bull is about to copy Ferrari, and they're not telling anyone. Because hidden inside their latest upgrade, there's a concept that could instantly change their entire season. A concept that Ferrari used to solve one of the hardest problems in Formula 1. Consistency. Right now, Red Bull's car loses up to half a second per lap just from instability alone. Not engine power. Not driver error. Pure unpredictability. And here's the shocking part. Ferrari already fixed that. So now Red Bull is doing something they almost never do. They're following, adapting, even copying. But what exactly are they taking from the SF-26? Why does this single change matter more than horsepower? And how can one hidden upgrade completely transform a car that Verstappen called impossible to drive? Stay with me, because once you see what Red Bull is really changing, you'll understand why this might be the turning point of their entire season. But to understand why Red Bull is suddenly looking at Ferrari, you have to understand what Ferrari actually solved. Because this isn't about speed. Not at first. It's about something far more valuable. Control. Because in modern Formula 1, speed without control is useless. You can have the fastest car on paper, but if the driver can't predict what it will do, that speed disappears. Corner by corner. Lap by lap. And that's exactly what's happening to Red Bull. The RB22 has performance. Hidden performance. But it only appears under perfect conditions. Perfect ride height. Perfect balance. Perfect energy deployment. And Formula 1 is never perfect. So most of the time, that performance stays locked. Unavailable. Untouchable. Now compare that to Ferrari. Their car might not always look dramatically faster. But it's always there. Always consistent. Always usable. And that difference changes everything. Because a driver doesn't need maximum performance. They need repeatable performance. Something they can trust. Something they can lean on. And Ferrari built exactly that. But here's where things get even more interesting. Because the key to all of this is the floor. Not the wings. Not the engine. The floor. Ferrari redesigned their floor to work across a wider operating window. Which means the car doesn't fall apart when conditions change. It adapts. Naturally. Smoothly. And Red Bull finally understood this. That's why their new floor for Miami isn't about chasing peak downforce. It's about expanding that window. Making the car less sensitive. Less fragile. Less dependent on perfection. But this creates a deeper shift. Because Red Bull's entire philosophy was built around precision. Narrow windows. Maximum peak performance. And now, they're moving away from that. Towards something more forgiving. More stable. More Ferrari. And that's not a small adjustment. That's a complete mindset change. But there's another layer to this. One that most people haven't connected yet. Because Ferrari didn't just stabilize the car aerodynamically. They stabilized it electrically. Through energy management. Their deployment is smooth. Predictable. Controlled. They don't suddenly lose power halfway down a straight. They don't drop into emergency modes unexpectedly. Everything feels planned. And Red Bull noticed that. So now, they're working on a system that does the same thing. A predictive energy model. One that prevents those sudden losses of power before they happen. And this is crucial. Because right now, the RB22 doesn't just lose time in corners. It loses time in phases. Moments where power disappears. Moments where the driver hesitates. Moments where confidence breaks. Fix that. And suddenly the car feels completely different. Not faster on paper, but faster in reality. But here's the catch. And this is where everything becomes uncertain again. Because copying an idea is not the same as understanding it. Ferrari built their entire car around this philosophy. Every component supports it. Every system aligns with it. Red Bull is trying to integrate it mid-season into a car that wasn't designed for it. And that's incredibly difficult. Because if one part doesn't match, the whole system becomes unstable again. So now Red Bull is walking a very fine line. Trying to transform the behavior of a car without rebuilding it completely. And that's why Miami is not just another race. It's a turning point. Because for the first time, we'll see if this Ferrari-inspired direction actually works. Or if it exposes something even more serious. That the RB22 can't be fixed with ideas alone. And this is where the story takes a turn most people are not expecting. Because if this Ferrari-inspired approach works, it doesn't just fix the RB22. It exposes something much bigger. It proves that Red Bull's original concept was wrong. Not slightly off. Not poorly executed. Fundamentally wrong. And that's a very dangerous realization for a team like Red Bull. Because their entire identity has always been built on one thing. Being ahead. Setting the direction. not following it. But now, they're reacting, adjusting, learning from a rival. And in Formula One, that shift is massive. But here's where it gets even more complex. Because even if the new floor works, even if the energy system becomes smoother, even if the car feels more stable, there's still a limitation they cannot escape. Weight. The RB22 is still heavier than it should be. And that affects everything. Acceleration, tire degradation, cornering load. You can improve balance. You can improve predictability. But weight is always there. Always costing time. So now Red Bull is facing a trade-off. A stable car that is still not fast enough. Or an unstable car that occasionally shows peak performance. And that's not a comfortable position. Because championships are not won with occasional speed. They're won with consistency. But now comes the most important part of all. Because this entire Ferrari-inspired shift, it's not just about performance. It's about Verstappen. Because for the first time in years, he doesn't trust the car. You can hear it in the radio. You can see it in the way he drives. He's not attacking corners anymore. He's negotiating with them. And that changes everything. Because when a driver like Verstappen loses confidence, you don't just lose lap time. You lose your biggest advantage. So this upgrade, this hidden shift toward Ferrari's philosophy, is also a test. Not just of engineering, but of belief. If Verstappen feels the difference, even if the stopwatch doesn't show a massive gain, that alone could change the trajectory of the season. Because confidence creates performance, not the other way around. But if he gets out of the car, and it still feels unpredictable, still unstable, still disconnected, then this entire approach collapses. Not publicly, but internally. Because at that point, Red Bull has tried everything. Aggressive concepts, micro-aerodynamics. Now, stability inspired by Ferrari. And if none of it works, there's only one conclusion left. The problem is deeper than expected. And that leads to a question Red Bull does not want to answer. Not yet. Not publicly. But it's there. Waiting. Because if copying Ferrari doesn't fix the RB22, then what exactly is left to copy? And more importantly, how far behind are they, really? And now, we reach the point where everything connects. Because this isn't just about copying Ferrari. It's about what happens if it actually works. Think about it. If Red Bull suddenly becomes more stable, more predictable, easier to drive, then something very uncomfortable becomes clear. They didn't need more performance. They needed less complexity. Because all this time, they were chasing perfection. Maximum downforce, maximum efficiency, maximum theoretical speed. But Ferrari chose something different. Usability. And if that philosophy starts outperforming Red Bull, then the entire competitive order shifts. Not just for one race. For the future. Because other teams are watching. Closely. If Red Bull proves that their original concept failed, and Ferrari's approach works, then everyone follows Ferrari. Not Red Bull. And that changes the direction of development across the grid. But here's the part that makes this even more critical. Because Red Bull doesn't have the tools to react quickly. Their wind tunnel, still one of the oldest in Formula One, limits how fast they can validate new ideas. So even if they choose the right direction now, they can't evolve it as fast as their rivals. And that creates a dangerous gap. Because Formula One is not just about finding the solution. It's about developing it faster than everyone else. And right now, Red Bull is behind on both understanding and execution. But let's go even deeper. Because there's something else happening here. Something strategic. Something long-term. Because by shifting toward Ferrari's philosophy, Red Bull is also preparing for something bigger. The next phase of this regulation era, where stability, energy control, and adaptability will matter more than raw peak performance. So this isn't just a reaction. It's an adjustment for the future. But that future comes with a risk. Because changing philosophy mid-season can break more than it fixes. You're not just adding performance. You're altering behavior, balance, interaction between systems. And if one piece doesn't align, the entire car becomes even harder to understand. So Miami becomes something very specific. Not a comeback. Not even a test. A decision point. If this direction works, Red Bull commits. Fully. They reshape development. They follow this path for the rest of the season. But if it doesn't, then they face something much worse. They go back to the drawing board. Without enough time. Without clear answers. And with a driver who is already losing patience. And that's the part nobody wants to say out loud. Because the RB22 isn't just fighting for performance. It's fighting for credibility. Inside the team. Inside the paddock. and inside Verstappen's own mind. Because once a driver starts questioning the project, everything changes. Communication changes. Feedback changes. Commitment changes. And that's when small problems become big ones. So when you look at this so-called secret upgrade, it's easy to think it's just another technical change. A new floor. A better energy system. A smarter setup. But it's not. It's a signal. A signal that Red Bull is no longer certain. A signal that Ferrari found something they didn't. And a signal that the balance of power might already be shifting. And the real question now is not whether Red Bull can copy Ferrari. It's whether copying Ferrari is enough to save them. And this is where everything finally comes together. Because if you strip away the upgrades, the technical language, the comparisons with Ferrari, what Red Bull is really facing is something much simpler. A choice. Not between parts. Not between setups. But between two completely different philosophies. On one side, the car they built. Aggressive. Precise. Extremely fast when everything is perfect. But fragile. Unforgiving. Difficult to control. On the other side, the direction they're now exploring. More stable. More predictable. Easier to extract performance from. But potentially less explosive. And here's the tension. Because in Formula 1, you rarely get both. So Red Bull has to decide. Do they keep chasing a car that can be the fastest on the grid, but only in very specific conditions? Or do they accept a car that is consistently competitive, but never dominant? And that decision is not just technical. It's cultural. Because this team built its success on pushing limits, on finding extreme solutions, on operating right at the edge. Now, they're being forced away from that edge, toward something more controlled, more measured, more calculated. And that's not easy. Not for engineers, not for leadership, and definitely not for a driver like Verstappen. Because his entire driving style, his entire advantage, comes from operating at that limit, dancing on the edge of control.